It's the 30/30 list. We're looking at the top 30 momentum companies on the ASX and the top 30 launchpad stocks. That's where they show up before they become momentum leaders. And this week, we're doing a little bit different in the approach. We're looking at the grey areas in our systems and processes because we've been analysing processes for some time and the questions keep coming up. How do we adapt? How do we change what goes on here? So this is an extra one. And then we've also got the requests that we normally get from members. Thank you, YouTube members. They send through those requests of the momentum leaders and the launchpad companies that they'd like the charts analysed. We will definitely be doing that. But first off, we say good morning to Gary Glover. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, Chris. Yeah, we're at a sort of a unique phase in the market, really, aren't we? Because we've sort of had that terrific run here for a while. We've now expanded to a new high, and we're kind of, we've moved away from a lot of the moving averages, so we're looking very extended here across the board. We are still seeing a bit of rotation through the Aussie market. So we're seeing CBA, Telstra, some of those stocks start to rotate down, and yet the market's still hanging on. So that's kind of healthy. So the rotation through there, but yeah, it is, I'm kind of in a quandary here personally, sort of like, do I just cash out here and sit back for a while? Do I back my process in and keep following it? Do I start to hedge some here? Do I trade a bit lighter? So I've got a mix of all those things that are happening at the moment. It's just, we're at a really interesting phase in the market there. So be curious sort of what your momentum profile sort of suggesting here.
Well, that's a good point because it's what you're talking about is those mixed emotions of sort of how we're feeling, what you're seeing. No doubt there are a lot of viewers who are in that same sort of place. The momentum profile sort of shows a similar aspect as well. So when we were talking at the market highs, that's where we're up here to the top left-hand chart, the blue squiggly lines, the momentum profile over time. It was peaking, and that's where we had sort of the best conditions. It fell off quickly, more than the market, and then it's rallied back to where we are here. So still about 2 standard deviations high, which tells us yesterday was better than for momentum trading, better than 96% of all the days we've seen in the last year. So it's telling us momentum is still strong. We know the market's strong, but the momentum is really strong. And two other aspects, things that you and I have talked about for a while, we've added that in because members had some requests. If we look at the number of companies on the ASX, tradable companies, 77% of them are greater than the 50-day moving average. So this is kind of that breadth, and I think that might fit in with the rotation that you've talked about.
How many stocks is that, Chris? Is that a whole,
solid question, because it does really matter. The numbers get completely skewed on the ASX because we have so many micro caps can blow the numbers out. So it's about 580 is the average, and that's what we're getting at the moment. So we can go down as low as sort of 530, 550. When the market was hot 5 years ago, we'd get 800 companies that were high volume, high trading.
So is that like the all odds or something that like that? Is that sort of like the all ordinaries or something, or is it
It's a bit like the all ordinaries in the number, but it goes beyond it because you know how sometimes we'll see on the launchpad some uranium companies, some tiny gold miners, some lithium stocks that are shooting the lights out. Yeah. Their volume's massive. Their market cap's not big enough to be in the all ords. But then you can also have some all ord companies that just trade nowhere and nothing happens.
Yeah.
The list is more dynamic than that. It's just, I guess it's as dynamic as we'd want to be to find the opportunities. So that's where we sit with the breadth. It's still pretty solid.
Yeah.
And then because of the current phase that we're in, you sort of look at the...
Have you got much, you don't want to be asking there, have you got much history on that? Like, what's like the, if we look at market peaks, what sort of percentage of like stocks are above their 50-year moving average? I mean, that's pretty high, 77%. So
it is. So we've seen it high towards 85, and when we got sort of back up towards here, so sort of almost 12 months ago, so 9-10 months ago. Yeah. This is only within the last 12 months, so we definitely want to expand that data out. That's what we've sort of proof of concept. We've got these numbers, and yes, okay, this is worth exploring. I've just pulled in some more S&P data, 500, to start crunching those numbers and see is there a difference in the Aussie and the US as well. So we'll definitely share those once we have them.
Because you'll get, over time there, you'll get a pretty good handle as to where we're sitting. Like, oh, do you know what I mean? How extreme? Because that looks pretty extreme to me without knowledge of the numbers there. But as you say, it's been higher than that. So that's interesting as well. It means, the market feels pretty hot here, but maybe we can still go a little bit higher. Who knows?
Yes, and there can be periods where we're hot only for a couple of days. We've seen this sort of a good example is just looking at this back going 5 years ago. The difference in the momentum profile between 4 days. So the 14th of March 2022 and the 10th of March 2022.
Yeah.
The range of how that momentum profile was, the difference was greater than what we see it in those 4 days, was broad you'd sometimes see for months. So that's a good point. But if we look at any random company on the ASX and try to find a probability of it going up 10%, it's currently just under 16%. Just find a random company out of 100, you're probably going to find 16 will be up 10%. That's what the odds tell us. So when you're talking about, you're kind of at odds with those feelings. The market's high, momentum opportunities are abundant, but there's a rotation going on and you're kind of hesitant along with also your cycles. So how do you manage that? You've got your process that you've refined and you've refined it really well over the last few years to the point where a couple of months ago you were saying, I really just want to trade my system. I've got to sit down and trade it and have faith in it and commit to it. How do you manage this kind of market and the rigidity of your system? Is there any gray area that you have in your trading?
Yeah, I was saying, I've been thinking about that a lot this week. I just kind of kept seeing a theme. A few people were sort of posting sort of something similar as well. It kind of made me sort of think about mine, and that's, I think there is. I mean, everyone's got to have their process, the process, and we sort of follow it. But is there grey in trading? I think there is, but also think that needs to be studied, the grey as well, Chris. And I think the best grey is actually, and it's kind of, we've done it sort of almost sort of come from doing the model stocks test. We did that CU6 there recently. One of the things we sort of learned with that CU6 was it was sort of a little bit different from a lot of other stocks. It had its personality of its own. So, and we talked about Drone Shield and Spartan, some of those stronger names in the past, they've hugged the 10 and just stayed above that, 10-day moving average. So you were just on the positive side of the 10-day moving average. That was sort of where the pocket was for that sort of stock. But every sort of stock's got its own personality there. And we just sort of, it was kind of pretty evident when I was going through that model book study of that CU6, it was sort of quite different from other stocks. And sounds strange, but I've actually traded a stock similar here recently where I noticed it wasn't similar to CU6. It was a little bit unique. It'd like to sort of come back in a little three wave, like a little Elliott wave, sort of three waves, and it would tend to undercut the 20. And actually, it sounds weird, but actually,
that kind of thing.
Undercutting the 20 was actually usually the time to add. If it was in an upward trend, you would actually be best to wait for it to undercut the 20 and add to it, which is kind of goes against my process to some regard, because I'm really looking for the stock to hold the 10 or the 20-day moving average, stay firm there, and look for a little B wave or some sort of positive break and follow it. So, but if you start to recognize that sort of personality, that stock, then you might be coming in late if you're following your process there. So I think there's a lot to be sort of said for sort of studying the actual personality of each stock that you're looking at, and then seeing whether you can actually tweak there. And I think that if you've done the homework there and studied it, then you can kind of step outside of your process a little bit, just because that that personality, that sort of stock. Yeah. So I just saw a few people posting about there was a market leader in the US there where it'd be in a tight range and just have that little bit of it'd have that sort of it'd roll off, and then recover, and then that would be the low. And then if this guy was saying, look, the last 3 times it's done exactly the same thing. It's rolled off, knocked everyone out, and then gone back, and then rolled up, bang. And he said this time here I was watching it instead of actually trading it like a normally would do. He said I just waited for the roll off reversal, and then I come in there, because that was exactly with the personality of that sort of stock there. Whereas that was more important than actually following a process, was recognizing what that stock was doing. So I think there can be some grey sometimes. So yeah, I've probably harped on about process recently, and then steps you sort of taken and waiting for that sort of strength there. But I think there is a time for a little bit of grey in trading there. Particularly if you notice the stock's got something unusual about it, or follows a certain process, you might sort of say as well. So you've got to adapt your process to that. So I think that's sometimes there is a little bit of grey in trading, and I think it's got to allow yourself a little bit of room to do that. And I know this week I've done that, and it's worked a treat personally. So yeah, pretty happy.
Well, that's probably a good opportunity for us to say, if you've been out there reading professionals' processes, studying them, and then using that to help you reflect on your own process and adapt it for an enhancement and improvement. Maybe we can ask the members and viewers and watchers to put their processes down there and sort of start that conversation. And who knows, we might be able to build on that in future videos. What do you think?
Yeah, please. So if we've talked about Kalamagi's process and talked about Vini's process and talked about my process. Yeah, but if you've got a process that you think sort of stands up, please please post it on the YouTube in the notes there, comments, and we might if we get a few responses there, we might look at those next week and chat about them. That'd be really good.
Yeah, and it's only supportive here. There's no ridicule, because our processes are always evolving. And I know your process you've been on for 20 years and it's an evolution of it. Mine's consistently evolving. So we're all growing. So there's no kind of wrong process. It's just where you are in the current stage.
No, it's going to be. The only thing with process is consistency. So yeah, so if you're going to follow that process, so you got to you got to stick with it. I think that's the thing with it. So you got to sort of see how it maps out. I mean, you can tweak it a little bit. I've definitely been tweaking mine a little bit, just but I'm not trying to do any big tweaks. I'm just trying to do sort of smaller tweaks in it. It'd be interesting to sort of see if some other traders out there be trading for a while and been successful, what process they're using. That'd be very interesting.
Yeah. Well, we'll have a look at that. So please comment below, and then we'll move over to let Gary do the screen share. The momentum leaders, these are over the last quarter. They've had the great rallies, the best gains. We're no doubt going to see EOL in there. We've had a lot of requests from members this week, a lot more than last week. So well done. Thank you for that contribution, and we'll try and get through all of them. But there's a lot of interest both in momentum and launchpad this week. And straight away, EOL, yes, someone corrected me on the typing in the comments. Yeah, EOS just shooting the lights out. How's that 100% movement in the last 2 weeks, Gary? That's just insane.
Yeah, I know. This one hurts a little bit for me because we were talking about this B wave breakdown here literally on a Friday, not that many Fridays ago. So had a terrific move here. We talked about how this actually did. So again, this broke the 10 and 20 here, which was unusual for it. It had pretty much been holding those moving averages prior to that. But the one thing it did do was sit on top of that previous high, which is definitely sort of something to watch for in those sort of stronger names. I do look for this. I actually sort of see this in across multiple time frames. So you might find the daily looks pretty interesting, like you had a pullback, but then you go back and look at the weekly chart. You notice that pullback on the daily is actually sitting on a weekly high, as well. Oh, that's even more prominent. Yeah, so that's why you can't just sort of be looking at your half hourlies and your dailies there. Sometimes you get to sort of pan out a little bit. And then again, we learn the profile of the stock as well. So look, I'm not saying go out and study every stock, do like a week's homework on it. It doesn't take that weekly. Study the moving average, just sort of have a look at the pullbacks, the nature of them, just to look, if you're going to think about trading it, it might take you 10 minutes, really 5 minutes to go and actually have a study that stock over the last few years and just sort of see how the moving averages hold up, what the volume print is, any sort of, anything to sort of stand out the stock, so it can be quite revealing if you sort of study the past few years in that stock. But EOS there, that's come out of the gates. I mean, you could argue that is an EP.
Yeah.
as well. So it's gone from like $3 to $3.60. So that's
20.
20% sort of. So that probably doesn't, that, yeah.
17 is the cutoff, is it?
Yeah, so around that 14%, I think it is there is the sort of stat. Anything above the 14% can be, but
Bit risky, but clearly this tells us that there was at least 100% in it.
But then again, this has been a strong stock here, so yeah. But yeah, it's been pretty amazing, all those sort of stocks there. GTR is actually one that we spoke about the last couple of weeks. Sort of a smaller name for me. It wasn't sort of too small for me personally, but I love how this had a really nice BCP in accuracy. Again, you got that strength, pull back, tightened up here. We got a little bit of a B wave break in here, and we sort of pull back in here. So all of a sudden you get this nice cup and handle as well in here. So we got a B wave break down in here, breaking 10 up 11 cents. You get a nice little handle again, and we get another B wave break of the handle around 14 cents. Again, too small for me, but that's a good looking chart there. That's what we want to see. You want to see that shallow strength, pull back, tighten up. That's, for me, that's okay. It's, even though it looks a little deep there, still stayed in the top half there. It's kind of one of the things I do like to sort of see is that it stays in the top half there. And you look at that 50-day moving average there, that's definitely pointing up, and it sort of held that. So that's also a good sign there that it's way above the 50 there. So that looks good. Yeah, still in pretty good shape, that stock. So LAM's a bit small there. There was a little bit of a handle in there, maybe an AP as well. But yeah, the only thing for me here is this volume is pretty big, Chris. So I just sort of, I normally wouldn't, it's not really the best sort of charting sort of setup there. That's really, I mean, you call that a 52-week high there, but then it had a bit of a shakeout there, but that volume's pretty big. So that's probably telling us to keep an eye on the stock here. Maybe the market pulls back here. Maybe this congests back here. But that volume tells us that keep an eye on this one here. Could be, that might be the first leg. We might get a congestion. We might get a leg later on. So that's the type of thing we'll see there. AGY, another VCP. So again, we get a bit of a burst out of the blocks, big volume. Whole thing tightens up in here. See this? And you can sort of see this as a little B wave break here. Again, too small for me, being only like 3 or 4 cents, but good VCP set up there. See how that sort of strength there? See all the volume?
Tied up in that little compression.
Yeah, so that's what you want to see. So if you want to see those VCPs, you can see there was a bit of heavy volume there in the first leg down. So I might have had you a bit nervous there, a bit of selling there, but then volume comes right back in again. But this is the money shot here, is seeing that volume dry up, to the point where almost the last day here is the pivot day, and the volume's so low here. That's often the case there. 40X is another episodic pivot there. Obviously, this is the Promethicus getting stake here. So this is quite, you just kept going, and we've almost doubled in value there since that day there. So
was that a tradable episodic pivot with that gain?
Yeah, it's probably a bit small, 24 up to maybe 30 and a half there. So 6. Yeah. Probably hard on the smaller ones too, Chris. Yeah. But I do consider that
big percentage.
Yeah, I mean that sort of stock's probably on its knees as well. And gets that. I mean that just shows no one knew that was coming, which is unusual as well.
It's really there's some inklings and some whispers, and that kind of just shows that the rest of the market discounted 40X, but Promethicus, being experts in that field, have opened up their wallet and said, no, like we can R&D on ourselves, or we can piggyback off these guys because they're clearly onto something.
Yeah.
So it shows that this medical space, and I remember trying to find a medical analyst when we started these conversations about 10 years ago, trying to find biotech. And at the time, there were only 4 that were open for public conversation where they could talk about their research. And then quickly, within about 6 months, there were only 2 left, and 2 of them have been mopped up by private equity or hedge funds, where they had to zip up their lips on their research. So it is actually pretty hard to get biotech research for these really niche areas. So
Yeah.
with this,
Yeah. And there was another chart there which I thought was interesting there, just because I guess it's another EP, obviously, jumps up here. So it's, again, pretty hard. That's a big percentage move. So it goes beyond our 14% there. But I have seen people posting there the last sort of month or two about there's something called the hook trade.
okay.
And so if you do get that EP or that big jump up, and then you start to sort of see it, pull back, you get the hook. Talk about like a lot of IPOs do the hook trade as well. It's like a lot of newer stocks that have less history. So it's sort of like this is like a little hook there, and it goes up. So think about a fishing hook. That's the sort of gaps up, and then you get and then you come through here. So something I've seen, I don't know who posted it a while ago, but since it's a bit like that. The foldback technique. When I sort of first read it, I thought, "Oh, that seems crazy," and then I've just started seeing it everywhere.
How's it
So
possible?
I've started to see this hook trade quite a few times. Things gap up, it's jumped up, so it's obviously done that. The EP has gone too hard, and then you see it, pull back for 4 or 5 days, and then start to round up. So something that I probably need to explore a bit more. But just a general observation there. That's one that's done pretty well. BTM, got a bit of a cup and handle there, Chris. So we had that in show of strength, whole thing sort of tightened up here. You've got a couple of did a little B wave break in here, but then it didn't go on with it. And then it did break the B wave in here, then it has gone on with it. But then it actually came up to the top here, and then nice little handle there. Again,
That's swing low. So broke the 10-day, held the swing low, and did
yeah.
come with the 20.
Yeah, the beauty in there is you sort of look at that 1, 2. It's only really 1 day of decent selling, and then the others are all kind of selling here. So considering how long in the, you might say this is long in the tooth here, had a pretty good run. No selling eventuates there. And so all of a sudden you go, oh, this could be a handle here. And 2 days we're recovering back there. This day he would break out. So that's a good sign there. That's a really good sign there. So then this has sort of gone on. If there's actually been quite a few cup and handles there, Chris. I actually made a note of more how. Yeah. I've got a bit of a printer issue at the moment there, so I can't print them off. So I just kind of be making a list of them. So once I get a new printer, we'll work out what's going on with this one. I go and print them all off and then study them all because there's been some crackers. So I wanted
Two A3s this morning, and they were both cup and handles. There's been a lot that have come through.
Yeah. ERD was another one there. I mean, this is probably, you could probably call this, I think, Vinny calls this like it's probably power play there, where you get that sort of stock which doubles in value and then does your little high type flag and then sort of comes out there. It's probably a little bit longer than you'd like to see, but that's still nice and tight there. You draw your trend lines through here like your channel.
It's way above that halfway of the range, isn't it?
Yeah. And you're just waiting for a B wave break here again, waiting for some sort of strength to buy it, breaking through, and maybe even adding on a second one. Or, if you looked at the upward channel here, like you might draw, I'm using like drawing tools and stuff there. You're looking through, to sort of see that you can sort of see a nice little tight there, just breaking through that, coming through there.
With a little bit, the vote looks like it was probably at like almost a month high on the day where it popped over.
Yeah, you can see how it's pretty tight there. Then you start to pop through, start to increase here. But that's again, that's that show of strength. Goes sideways, and that's way beyond the 50%. It's probably only come back a third or a quarter of the range. So but yeah. So I know Minavini talks about the power play being in the top 25%, something like that. So this might have just done slightly more than that. I like them in the top half, but yeah, the high, obviously the tighter the better, but still left us in a pretty strong position for a run there. So that's had a pretty good move as well. AL3 was another cup and handle as well. So we just sort of, it's come back a little bit deep in here, but it's gone back to the high here and just sort of broken through. So yeah, there's good volume through there. Some good breadth there. But yeah, probably too small for me. But just one that looks okay. Bit of a VCP in there. So this is one thing I sort of haven't been great at over the years. It's sort of like, this is a pretty long trend here, but then it looks a bit extended here, but then the whole thing tightens up again. And then you look at that and go, oh, it looks like it's way too extended. Then the whole thing tightens up and then it comes through the B wave. And that's a little VCP in there, and then it breaks the 22. And then you could add again on the break of lower high as well. So again, you're just buying on signs of strength. But yeah, it's still kept popping here. So it's surprising how sometimes these ones they tend to run up quite a bit. That they're overlapping here. They can. I know sort of McLaren used to sort of talk about, you get an impulsive move and then you're in a range bound, and then you can pop out of that as well the same way here. So sometimes this overlapping move here, holding those moving averages there, that can be like the pause in the trend before you have the acceleration at the end there. So something looking out there. LOC, probably the last one there. Just just been pretty amazing here that this is sort of like, obviously that sector's been pretty buoyant there, but the thing I find, you see here, cuts the 50, cuts the 50, cuts the 50, cut the 50 here as well. So again, learning the personality of the stock here. But then once this stock gaps up here, Chris, does not cut the 10-day moving average. So once the stock starts rolling, even here, there's a little mini rally here, and a few little mini rallies as well. So once it does start trending, it tends to hug the 10 there. But it does tend to always come back and undercut the 50. So again, momentum traders are probably, that's why sometimes you got to look at the personality of these sort of stocks there, sort of see what's happening there. But yeah, just thought it was pretty interesting. But yeah, pretty interesting quarterly momentum list there. We've got Drain Shield, and I know people might be still asking about this, but these things have had phenomenal moves there. Still holding the trend in place. So, that to me is a little bit of a, that potentially could be an overbalance just because that's the largest correction of the whole move. There was a bit of selling in there as well, but we do know that after an overbalance, it can either come back and make a lower high or it can make a marginal new high. So just be a little cautious there at the moment with that. But these stocks have exceeded my expectations. So everyone else is probably amongst they've probably been happy with them as well. So yeah. But
Well, you've done well to preempt members' requests. There's two left: CPV, Charlie Papa Victor.
CPV, yeah. Look, I thought the volume was quite interesting. Bit of a cup and handle there. You could sort of almost argue that's a little sort of high type sort of setup in there, sort of come out of that. So the strong aspect there is that's strong volume, nice chunky, good volume there. Breaks a few swing highs. That's the first sign of strength, and the whole thing pulls back and congests there, and comes out of that there. So yeah, break a little B wave up. I probably just didn't look at this one here just because it's probably a bit small, but yeah, I thought it was pretty reasonable there, and the volume's pretty steady again. So yeah, it looks okay.
And SYA, Sierra Yankee Alpha.
Yeah, probably a little too small here. This one, just a little, yeah.
Volume's kind of positive.
Yeah, volume's okay. Yeah. You see, there's so many good charts in that list.
Yeah, you got a lot to choose from.
Yeah. So you're sort of like, you gotta sort of wedge your way through them. So yeah. Yeah, and there's some great charts also in the launchpad this week as well. So yeah, you gotta, it's hard there. Still seeing setups here. That's the sort of thing about I'm struggling with, is I'm still seeing setups. So I'm still trading those setups, but I'm wary the market's pretty close to high. And I think this second week of August is kind of like, to me, I thought, previously I look at those cycles and timing there, and then we've also, the S&P is now expanded that 25% of that previous range. So every time that we've come out of a low like this, really hard, we've gone to the 125% expansion and then had a bit of a breather. And I've even gone back and studied some of the other cycles from a timing perspective. to see if there's anything that matches up there. And that high actually is about half a year from the previous high, which we're about 2 days away from as well. So that's a little bit. So we're hitting that same expansion level. We're running the same amount of time that we normally run out of that sort of pockets. And a few times we've had moves like this. Not a big subset, but yeah. I mean, the good news is we don't tend to get big pullbacks from that sort of setup, but it does lead to a pause or a throwback here. So, it'd be like the cup and handle here. We've made our cup. We might just need a little handle heater. That's where I think the market is. I think the market's might just be about to establish a little bit of a handle. So that's going to make it messy and hard to trade here. So, I'm going to follow Jim Ropel's lead here and put a few hedges on and stick with my longs. I'll scale them back a little bit. But I'm going to sort of back my process over the market. So the market's a bit weak. I've got a few hedges on, which will protect me, but I'm banking on my stocks outperforming the market. Hopefully, because we're still seeing rotation. We're seeing, CBA Telstra, just a big name starting to roll off, and other stocks still. So we're still going to, in the past year, I've sort of got to this point and wanted to take everything off, but then stocks I was in, they kept going up. So I'm just going to, that's the way I'm going to play it personally. And we'll see how that rolls.
Well, I'd agree with that. The number of opportunities have been increasing, and I'm actually more invested than I was a week or so ago after taking profits. So I'm surprised with what's happening, but I'm just trading the opportunities, trading what the market presents in front of me.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the launchpad. There's a huge amount of requests in this week's launchpad, which we're really happy to see. And hopefully it speaks to how abundant that is in the opportunities. Something that we've talked about for many years now is the thematics that we see in the launchpad. And if you've got the chart of LYC, it's probably worth putting back up there, because something that we're seeing now is what we saw with rare earths for a couple of months. We just kept seeing not necessarily the top thematic, but it was always in the top 10 or 15. Remember, there's about 380 that we've broken down. So to be in the top 10 is a pretty good feat. And for months, it was just bubbling along as showing as launchpad and having a bit of relative strength. And that was for months and months. We've also had throughout this whole period, and you might have seen this with some of the opportunities, you talked about 40X, radiology and imaging, oncology and cancer, medical scanning, research conduction, and diagnostic equipment. They're actually ranked sort of 8 through 12 today on the launchpad. It's possible that rotation, we can see some health there, because we saw that with a lot of the rare earths and the individual minerals that we have classifications for. So that's just worth noting. In the launchpad, those 4 medical areas have just consistently been strong for a fair few months now, a bit like rare earths.
It's funny you say that, Chris, because I'm playing that sector as well. And actually, I follow some cycle guys as well, and they look at sort of like some longer term cycles there, and the biotech and the health care cycles are both positive, both turning up at the moment, and still sort of have a reasonable room to run, So I thought, okay, that's interesting that they've got that's one of their cycles they've seen that's sort of bottomed out here and turned up and has some longevity, where I think a lot of the other sectors are sort of showing the opposite. So that's what I mean. There's always going to be some money going somewhere. So we can sort of still stick with the strong areas there. Maybe we can still be long in the market if it does have a bit of a pullback here, but there'll be a sector that might hold up here. So interesting you say that, because I've definitely seen that that thematic definitely hold up there.
We hadn't talked about this, but yeah, more than half my positions that I've got on at the moment are in that space, and it's done well for me. They've all moved up. Most of them are sort of above stops or above break even, so it's happy days. They're just not running as quickly as LYC. But I know that's hard for me. I'll buy a breakout, but not that kind. And just on the momentum, you've probably seen this as well. We have the similar sort of things. We've still got defense in there. We've got American miners with a lot of the Trump tariffs and what he's talking about, and the expenditure into MP from the Pentagon, the US rare earth miner, and purification, I guess, whatever. And then there's rare earths and aerospace, but also lithium. So that has been showing back up again, which is interesting. So with that kind of overarching thematic, and I am interested you seeing that with the US leaders, stock traders, and your own tradings. It's sort of that's a good vote of confidence for my own trading. What are you seeing in the launchpad?
Yeah, the one that the standout here was C79. I think this is one that you know this is one that I've earmarked to print off it, sort of study this move there because we've had that really strong move out of that low, then had that little VCP tightening process there, and then we've come out a nice cup, that beautiful sort of cup and handle there at the end there as well. So, I mean, you get the VCP and cup and handle all sort of similar there, but yeah. So just interesting there that it sort of tried to break out here, then sort of I think it might have went just slightly high, and it would come back in little three ways. It actually expanded. Actually, I made a note that it pulled back, expanded again, and then expanded lower here. So, but held slow. So but it held the 50 and the 20 up. Held the 50 moving average there anyway. The whole period there. But so there's a few little shakeouts in there. So you might have been watching this, ready to, you might have jumped on this, and then you might have shook out. You might have jumped again, got shook out. But then the whole thing tightens up here, and I mean the volume really tightens up here in this last sort of probably 4 or 5 days. The volume really, really dries up there. So that's probably the thing that I sort of noticed there is that once you sort of start to see that volume tighten up, and if you're having those sort of congestion days like that under the high there, and there's no selling coming in, you got to be watching this. So that
You've almost gone bar by bar.
yeah.
Where would your entry be? Because you're waiting for that B wave break. You have 5, 6 days ago, you have that higher close, which is just below there. So is that trigger, or do you actually have to buy intraday?
It could have been on that day coming through that high there. So the volume was okay, but then it threw back. So you might have got spooked here. This gave another trigger as well, but didn't really go on of it. So you might have, if you'd sort of held here, which you probably would have had it just below the 20. You probably
below the 50.
Yeah, you're seeing this spike and then a failure again, and then what's going on here? This might have definitely shook you out here. Okay, I'm out. I watch this, but then the whole thing tightens up again. So again,
after it tightens up, can you get a re-entry in there? That's kind of
yeah.
So I know I wouldn't have. It would have been too fast for me.
Oh, okay, yeah. So I would have probably used something like that high there at sort of 515. So I was like, okay, this has stayed nice and tight here.
Yeah.
These all light. So if it breaks through 515, this day didn't. I think it went to 515, which is often the case there. So that
closed at 515.
Yeah, leads you in there. The volume might have been up a little, but then you come through the next day. The next day it opens up here, opens at 514, and then goes straight through. And yeah, so that might have had you a little trigger there, but I didn't trade this one there. I noticed I did see this sort of late this day here, sort of pretty much end of day, and I thought, well, it's probably going to go on with it. I thought I'd maybe to pull it back in the range or something a little bit. You could maybe try and sometimes if I miss a bar like that, I might sort of put my entry just above the midpoint. Sometimes you get a big bar like that, you can come back and maybe fill in the top half, but yeah, it didn't really happen. So, but that's a good chart there. I think NCK as well was another cup and handle as well. So there's a bigger name. Again, it's sort of slightly higher there, but then this handle stays nice and tight here, and all that just comes through. So there's another nice cup and handle, and then once they come out there, bang. So that's probably reporting day as well. So that's gapped up a little bit. It's gone straight through the top there. That's that's a little bit of an EP there. So you definitely buy that. So that was quite good there. I think the other handle in there. This is one that's a bit lower here. Hasn't broken through there. But yeah, there's just been some really good cup and handles setting up here lately. So yeah, it's some plenty to sort of look at there. I think AGY is that Like that VCP we mentioned, WC8. This one's interesting there just because it's still in a downtrend there, still hasn't broken a swing high, but we're starting to see a bit of volume come in. So definitely just one to keep an eye on. AXE. There's another one there I thought was a bit of a VCP. This has been a past leader, but it's been a bit weak here recently. But definitely saw some good volume here. And I think these guys have just announced some. Yeah, there was actually an announcement on the 12th of August there regarding partner or something with in that sort of chip space. So quite a positive announcement there. So the first day up here, it finished pretty strong, but not as strong as it. It seemed like a really good announcement, but it was sort of never really got going. But then the next day, it's followed through. So it's like people didn't read it closely enough the first day, and the next day they're all reading it. So that's interesting, man, because that's come out some good volume there for me personally. But I did think that was an interesting setup there. You can see GMG. That's sort of again an old leader. It's had a nice pullback, a little bit of a B-wave break in the last few days. That's kind of interesting. Like NCK we mentioned.
Well, it's back to a Wyckoff spring, that GMD. Just undercutting.
Yeah. But the F and just him thought this was interesting there. Not the best setup there, but gone to a slight new high here. So interesting to see whether that holds or not. But yeah, that's probably the ones that I sort of picked out there. But, yeah, there's quite a few stocks in that list that Chris, that I thought were some laggards as well. There was definitely some laggards in there, which is always a bit of a worry because when we sort of see a lot of laggards pop in there as well, and it's always a bit of So there's some good setups in there, but it's also definitely some laggards as well in there.
Well, there's a few from the lithium space in the launchpad, and we got a lot of requests from them. So let's see if we can catch them. We've got Liontown, PLS, IGO, and then 29 metals, but not quite. But so Liontown, I've traded this throughout the first part of July. That was good, but it's quite whippy. So sold into heat, happy. But
I think it'll sort of step out there. So So look, it's broken a few swing highs here. That's pretty positive. Some volume's been pretty good. Definitely got a little bit of selling here this week. I think that's around the cap raise as well. So quite extraordinary that actually that did the cap raise, and then bang, we get the Charlie's cup. Right there. So everyone do the cap raise going, oh shit, that's great. I can sell it at a high price. So caused a bit of pullback. But so I think these will settle down and congest there. I thought the PLS was probably more interesting. That sort of gapped up, showed a bit of strength out, but now is sort of just congesting here. So, don't be surprised to sort of see that pull back and congest all the way back to the high here. But so far,
take it around to the 200-day moving average as well. Finally got
But they just run pretty hot there. I thought IGA was probably the easier one to read there because, again, like it's almost like our fallback technique, Chris. So there's our low. So we know when it comes out of this low, it's going to follow the same path that it took in. So this is the first swing high here. So that's 445 or something like that. So it tells us that's going to be resistance there. Then maybe it bounces back down again. It's going to come back and follow the same path out again, come back down here. So it gets a little, I might say it's a bit more complex, but the levels not, definitely got to respect those. So when they start moving through it, this could be the next level to watch here. And then bang, that's exactly where we hit. And that dropped all the way back down to this level here. It's a perfect fallback technique. So, I mean, that's why this theory, when I first read it, I thought it was crazy. But then I just kept seeing it over and over again. And it's a really useful tool to have in your arsenal because stocks often do, they they do often come out of these lows the same way they go into them. So not all the time, but once you start seeing it getting in a rhythm there, and that's, yeah. So I've actually traded this based on that rhythm, and it's actually been pretty good. So,
Well, as you're drawing those horizontal lines, it reminds me of, I think, the slowest book, the book that took each of us the longest to read, which is Trades About to Happen, David Weiss following the Wyckoff. And I remember you'd read sort of 3 pages and they'd take half an hour or 40 minutes because he'd talk about a support line and we go back and look at the chart. And it sort of fits in with what you're talking about there with the support and resistance lines from previous months or years can actually reinforce. And it sounds like IGO is a perfect example of what he'd put in his book.
yeah.
So
So we were talking about CS6, and we're talking about other C79. What was the one that we covered there just recently? That was
what's that C6? I remember which
in the mobile. We did the
was about. I'll just load that up because we had a whole short list. So you will excuse this because we shared with members and said which one do you want to vote for. But Gary and I both done the research on about half a dozen companies. We're trying to remember. The CU6, that's the
CS6 is the one we talked about last week there. But the model book there, we covered another one. It was I thought it was actually on the list there, but I can't see it there. But yeah, it's had a phenomenal run because it's actually it's set up again as well. It basically did a little B-wave break after being long in the tooth and rolled through. So I noticed when I sort of saw that first as well, it actually reminded me of Mesa Blast because when I looked at Mesa Blast, every time it had actually run hot, it'd come back in 3 waves, but it'd come back and undercut the 20, and then so again goes run back here, so pulls back, undercut 20, and comes back. Even went back historically there a few times it sort of didn't, but majority of the time it tended to sort of come back in 3 ways here. So I was looking at this recently thinking, it's just pulling back here. Where do I add to this? And so this stock told me that I should be waiting for this to cross below the 20 and then just
reload.
And just by the first daily range break. So, because oftentimes you get those little ABCs, and then as soon as you break the range high, so that's just as the range there. Because each day down, lower high, lower high, lower high. Each day down, lower high until it breaks it there. So that broke it there. I think we're breaking it there. We're breaking this here. So it just told me as soon as we break above that low, 231, we should be buying that. So we did exactly what I did. So, so I've managed to get some more size back on this one here, which is kind of a bit of I think this is a game changing announcement for that stock personally. So, but it's going to be, it could be messy like this, but I think it looks pretty good. Yeah.
Well, that definitely is a good chart. The other ones in the request so far we haven't covered. We had a few asking for WCN, Whiskey Charlie November, and some great manners in there too. Thank you very much.
WCN, yeah, just a little small there. Yeah, pretty gappy as well. Very, very hard to trade that. Nothing, not much I can add there on the chart there for that one.
Yeah, it's hard with the lower volumes. But 29M, 29 metals, that should be easier with the depth and the share price.
Yeah. So obviously the copper plays have had a pretty good run there. They've just sort of started to ease off it. So I think you just watch these there because obviously coppers and metals have been pretty strong here. Now they're all going through a bit of a pause here at the moment. So not all of them, but yeah, some of them are starting to pause. So they're probably just on the watch list there.
There was one that you had ready for the model book. Didn't get voted in just yet, so we will record it. But AII, that was on a request.
Yeah, that Monty there, that was a leader previously. That was impulsive, corrective, impulsive, corrective, impulsive, corrective, impulsive, corrective. This is the thing about these tight patterns there. You want to see strength, tighten up, strength, tighten up, strength, tighten up, strength, tighten up. So that's a really, really good setup there. It's not the easiest stock to trade here. Market depth wasn't very good on it. I did see this around about here. It was just it's hard to get any sort of size on there.
I seem to remember talking to you at the time, and you said you looked at it and you had to go through 4 or 5 price steps to get your
Yeah,
5%
yeah.
allocation.
To be honest, there was probably like a dozen, or maybe half a dozen stocks I quite liked around this period that was similar sort of looking, but just again,
Get a feel.
but yeah, I just know that at that stage there we were getting so many good signals across the board. Um, uh, I, I personally chose the more liquid ones that I can move in and out of. Then
There's still some just 2 left on the list from the request side, ones that we've probably traded a few times before. What was it? On the list, 12th, no, 8th, ARU, Arafura, ARU. And
yeah, a little small then, just a little bit up and down, up and down. Definitely some pretty heavy volume off that last high, which should be probably a little bit of a negative. So just got to be careful with that.
And last one, CHN, Charlie Hotel,
HN, yeah.
Palace.
Just, I mean, I know there's had a good run here, but the problem with this chart there, and I see a lot of guys recommending these sort of names there. That is a problem there, CHN, it's every time they have a run, they've just got so much overhead there. So look, it looks pretty impressive on the daily, but when these stocks, as soon as these stocks run, when the run stops, the selling kicks into gear, and that's the problem there. So that's CHN, I think NVX. Yeah, there's plenty of those on that list. There's a few laggards in there. Even Shanna Barbara as well. That's, it's just, there's so much overhead there. It's just going to be hard for these stocks to sort of thrive there. So you want to be sort of buying new stocks there. Couple that I did see, I was looking sort of just for VCPs there, Chris. I think ATA was sort of one that I thought was interesting. AXC, which I think was on our list, we covered that one. That sort of breakout. GUG, I thought that's sort of tightening up here as well here. AZY was a past leader, hasn't got going here, still sort of stalling here. Had no B wave break, we're just on a bit of a watch list there. PPS has got to be a bigger VCP on that one there, but not sure I love the big wide VCPs. I prefer to sort of see them tighter. That DTL's got a bit of a VCP as well on it, which is in that maybe cloud AI potential, could be a beneficiary. ACE is another one that's sort of tightening up as well, like a VCP, but yeah, it still hasn't broken really here yet. So again, just tightening up. I think EZZ is another one, bit of a VCP. It's had a bit of a run. It's probably taken a bit long to get going here. I prefer to sort of see them be a bit stronger and then be tight and then get going here. So it's kind of broken out, but it hasn't gone with it. So yeah, but there's a few interesting charts out there, but yeah, just yeah.
Well, we will look forward to the comments below. So you're watching this far, well done. Congratulations to you. Take the opportunity, write the comments below. While we're not going to give advice, we can use them as pointers for the conversations, possibly next week. So Gary, when we're looking at processes, you've talked about your process, and then you like process, but the grayness. So maybe we can explore that a bit more next week as to how those two fit together, and possibly what would you like to see in the comments below?
Yeah, maybe just sort of what, yeah, I'll be curious to sort of see what what process people sort of follow there. If they're using risk multiples, if they're selling into heat, if they're are they scaling in, are they scaling out, or are they just using simple, or is it I mean, I heard I was listening to Mark Ritchie this morning on the podcast, and when he first started trading there, I think he was like a 2-for-1 trader, very similar to Menavini. He would just be taking, just be small X, just trying to compound the account by smaller stuff. So, you can do small ones there. I mean, mental traders there, we're trying to catch a big piece of that move here. So, yeah, it's interesting there. Sort of, if a few guys have sort of had a good process there and they've managed to get on a big one, I'd love to know what process they followed to get on and how much they stayed with that big one. Because obviously we were able to hold on. Yeah. So if have they been able to hang on to these gains there? So that's yeah. And I guess I'm curious as to whether are they taking some off, or they just held the whole thing. It's yeah. So I sort of think it's harder to hold the whole thing. I think it makes it easier if you take some off. It takes the pressure off. Yeah, I think so. But look, maybe there's someone out there. It's a different process. But maybe they're prepared to take a few losses there and try and catch those big gains. But we'll wait and see.
Very good. Well, thank you very much, Gary Glover from Novus Capital.
Thanks, Chris.